Hi, my name is Laura Kuster. I grew up in Burnsville, Minnesota, which is a suburb of the Twin Cities area, and I currently work right now as a cardiac clinical care chaplain at Presbyterian Hospital in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Chaplaincy has kind of been described as a vacuum position in a lot of ways because some days it's hospitality. There are some times that I help people simply, hospitals are scary. Help them get to where they're going. Sometimes I help them get to where they're going next, kind of in connection with the social workers and the care coordinators once they're discharging. There is also the spiritual care element, which of course is very centralized, but there are so many things that I end up doing during the progress of my day, which could be staff support, which is key, family support, and then ultimately patient support in helping them. Oh, I think I would probably put it best as just telling their stories. I grew up in probably just about 20 miles south of Minneapolis in St. Paul. And let's see, I was 15, and it was the very first boyfriend I'd ever had. And we were 3 months into that relationship, and his mom died. 15 years old and going in the midst of all of this incredibly sad, tragic situation, first noticing that I'm like, I sort of have this ease of knowing what to say, or at least feeling like the stuff that's coming out of my mouth isn't inane and hurtful, that I maybe offer some kind of presence. And this carried on, and that continued into me ultimately going to seminary and having to do some additional work as part of my coursework that got me interested in not being so in my head about theology, but definitely being a very practical embodiment with just everybody who's around me. So for about 5 years in Lincoln County, I would drive around to various people and places and addresses I didn't know existed, and the four-wheel drive that I needed to get there. And once it was time to relocate to Albuquerque when my dad died, because my parents were living here at the time, one of my old former mentors, who has always been a chaplain at Presbyterian Hospital, and it was somebody I studied under, said, there is a position coming open. Why don't you apply for it? The rest is history, I guess. So I went to a very large suburban high school. My graduating class was about 625 people. So from a social element, I really, by virtue of that, never expected to be in the same classes with the same people. 625 classmates is a vast thing. And when you're trying to survive high school with some semblance of having community and friendships, for me, it just made a lot. I mean, I was a band geek. I was a swimmer. And I don't want to say that I knew a lot of people in a lot of places, but I think by virtue of the anonymity sometimes, I learned how to be kind of funny and open and just kind, because that's how people ultimately work. Also am still quite a writer, and so I took a lot of English classes. I loved English classes, and I was fortunate enough to have a teacher who taught English, and then also in sort of my upper grades, branched off into talking about mythology. And he had this great class called Mythic Patterns. So we talked about archetypes. We talked about myth. We talked about Greek gods and where that all patterns out to understand just sort of what's implicit in human culture of how we choose to understand life around us in ways that aren't particularly black and white. I think the other class that I had that was just profound for me was a mentoring class. And I did it for the entirety of my junior year. And I studied with a piano professor at a small liberal arts college in downtown St. Paul. And I am not a good pianist. I'm somebody who does well when I practice, but I'm nothing like a virtuoso. And what that class really taught me was how to be really content with the product of an art and an artistic process that didn't culminate in something that was like a letter grade. And it really moved me out of this sense of needing to get some kind of qualifying A, but it was more about this is the beautiful thing that I at moments clunked through in my junior recital in May at the end of, studying with this professor. And it was the first sort of liberation I had that life is not going to give you grades. Life is going to teach you about how you can work really hard and be very proud of your hard work, and how somebody else might be able to do something much easier than you do, but you are still making an incredible amount of beauty with your intention and your focus and your love of something.